Amazing. Okay, I think, yeah, there's a couple of people now and we can start right off. I'm really excited about this. Okay, so let's start. Welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us here today. I'm Susana Argüelles, Director of Blue Communities or Plastic Oceans International. I'm based in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, which doesn't look like it right now because I'm in Mexico City, but yeah, that's where I live. Okay, so we are here today in honor of our second edition of our annual Trees and Seas Festival, where we seek to raise awareness about land and sea conservation and the huge importance to start acknowledging and recognizing our world and ourselves as one with everyone and everything. So for those who don't know, just a small and quick recap, Plastic Oceans works to support the land and its intrinsic values through our 4 pillars. These are education, advocacy, action, and science. Our programs are centered around fostering sustainable communities across the globe through local community-based projects. So if there is something that I would love to highlight in this panel discussion is the huge importance of recognizing and honoring the path that our ancestors have walked and drawn for us. Going back to our roots does not mean we have to walk away from everything that humans have developed to today. You know, technology and economical and social growth are a part of who we are right now, but it depends on us and how we choose to carry on with it from this moment on. So to what things and aspects in life we choose to give true value and respect, and which we can drop and keep walking hand in hand as communities, you know, the same way we were invited to live on this planet. There is a quote that I really like, and I would love to share with all of you before we begin, and it goes a bit like this. If we are all cut from the same fabric of life, then by definition, all peoples, all cultures share the same mental acuity, the same raw genius. There is no hierarchy of progress in the history of culture, no evolutionary ladder to success. Every culture really does have something to say, and each deserves to be heard, just as none has the monopoly on the road to the divine. This was said by Wade Davis, a cultural anthropologist. So this idea is exactly what pulled us into creating Blue Communities. Blue Communities is an initiative ready to honor every single community, culture, and individual by the way they think and what they can give back to care for our environment. So Blue Communities is a collective of leaders driving their communities to sustainability and working together to navigate the complexity and urgency of our global and local context, keeping in mind that even though a life might sound like a lot of time, right now, it's exactly something that we do not have. We need to start acting now together as a collective, as one, as I mentioned before. So now with this being said, we are very grateful to have this panel for you today to discuss the work of 3 fantastic individuals who have devoted their lives to think outside the box and question themselves on how we can truly make the world a better place. So before I introduce our speakers, a few housekeeping items. So if you have any questions, please feel free to add them in the chat. Towards the end of the hour, we'll have time to ask our panelists additional questions. So for now, let's learn a bit more about our panelists today, which I am beyond excited to have here with me. So yeah, first of all, we have Erica. So Erica Valencia is founder and CEO of Ectagono, a company focused on sustainable development consulting, and Nectaria, a company focused on creating sanctuaries for innovative solutions, as well as co-founder of Rios Tarango, which seeks to restore ravines by transforming them into ecotourism corridors, which is she's currently part of the steering committee of the Economic, Social, and Environmental Council of Mexico City, and of the Commission of Circular Economy and Green Jobs within the same, as well as the editorial board of Canirac for sustainability and reconnection with the ancestral practices of the land and culture. So this is Erica, and a very good friend of mine as well. Then we have John Bonfiglio. He works with socio-environmental nonprofit 9 Wave in the Americas. He's also a print and broadcaster journalist, and he's managing editor for Plastic Oceans Reading Content. I would also like to mention that actually 9 Wave, the organization that John is working with, was our pilot program or pilot organization for Blue Communities. So we started off with 9 Wave. We started off in Campeche. So yeah, there were our pilot program, and we can say that it's going amazing. So welcome, John, and thank you for being here. And then we have Santiago. Santiago Lobeira, he's passionate about technology and sustainable innovation, ecopreneur, communicator of solutions that contribute to improve life on Earth, and promoter of the circular economy. International speaker at various forums such as Expo Management and Tech Talks, hosting radio and television programs aimed at creating greater environmental awareness and sustainability in business. Santiago is currently CEO of Evolusie 3.8, an accelerator for sustainable businesses and impact investments that seeks to allocate resources to projects that promotes its 4 pillars: climate change, circular economy, conservation of natural resources and ecosystem, as well as health and well-being. So these are our panelists for today. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time and being here with us today, and while discussing such a important and urgent matter. So I would like to start off with the general question for everyone. It might sound a little bit weird, you know, that we have to go all the way back, but I intended it to be this way. So I would like from everyone to tell us a little bit about where you grew up as a kid and how has that influenced your vision on how you see and perceive a sustainable community nowadays. How have your professional experiences helped strengthen or shape this vision? So we can start with Erica.
Thank you, Sue, and thanks for the presentation. And I'm so glad to be sharing this panel with all of these friends. And how I grew up as a kid and how has this impacted my vision nowadays. I grew up here in Mexico City, and my biggest inceptions in Mexico City were about the insecurity we live every day here in, we lived every day here in Mexico City, and how it was very important to regain this reconnection with ourselves and with the earth, to re-empathize how we were relating with each other's. And then my other inception was about mainly about the big quantity of food waste and of waste we were creating. Since I was a child, I had a big relationship with all these watersheds and these urban green areas in Mexico, and how we were converting them into, or transforming them into big trash cans instead of appreciating the beauty in nature. And this was always a problem I wanted to solve since I was small. And my professional experiences have strengthened this vision, since I had this big dream of creating of transforming these green, especially urban areas, into cultural, educational, recreational spaces where we as humans could reconnect with green areas from another conception, once again understanding our relationship with green areas as a mirror where we could where we could understand ourselves as part of the ecosystems, and not as separated from them. So that's how my experience as a child strengthened the vision of what we do now in Ectagono.
I love that. Thank you so much. We can jump into John, if you want to go.
Hi. Hi, Sue. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here today. My founding myth, I guess it probably involves knowledge and knowledge structures. And I guess probably 2 things happened in my youth, which sort of established a paradigm, an important paradigm for me. The first one was I moved around a lot as a kid for personal family reasons. And that meant that every so often we were in a different culture, different language, different knowledge systems, different memories, different prejudices, and so on. So what that sort of allowed me to realize is that there was no sort of, I thought what you read out at the beginning, Sue, was really interesting, because that kind of decentralizing of knowledge or received knowledge is unusual today. Like we basically assume that, you know, the Anglo-Saxon world, or the Anglo-Saxon world likes to assume that that it has all the answers and it has sort of primacy of information and knowledge and so on. So I think that moving around for me as a kid meant that I was very aware that actually that there were all these different knowledge systems that could complement each other and that were equally valuable. And then the second thing which happened was I had a pretty significant accident as a kid as well, which meant that I spent a fair bit of time inside hospital and outside school. So I missed formal schooling for a good couple of years, and it meant that I was reading like a book a day. I mean, two things. One, I was reading huge swathes of literature from various different parts of the world, various different writers and so on. That was kind of reinforcing this sense of different knowledge systems and different perspectives and so on. And the other thing that happened during that period was I literally saw kids die next to me in beds next to me. So that also meant that I was very aware of, you know, of the potential for a lack of happy ending, and also the fact that adults didn't have all the answers was the other thing, which is, you know, there were doctors there and there were nurses there, but still that didn't lead necessarily to a rosy happy ending. And I think all of this led me to a point of kind of social critique, personal critique, and there's a really nice line by Gloria Steinem where she says, that US feminist, she says, when you start asking questions, there's no turning back. And I think that foundation for me led me to ask questions, which is ultimately led me to being at a point in which, you know, it's really clear to me, again, as you said at the beginning, Sue, that we are at a particular point in time in which, you know, we don't have time on our hands, that we need to reimagine systems and structures and so on. And the only way we can do that is by asking real, fundamental, serious, existential questions of ourselves.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, we can go to Santiago if you want to go.
Sure, Susana. This has been a long time since I, talk about what I did or where I grew up as a kid. But what I can tell you is, as well as Erika, I was born in Monterrey, and then I lived all my life here in Mexico City. And as a kid, I grew up in a neighborhood where there was the only patch of, nature was a tiny little garden there. My father, he was an engineer, a civil engineer. So when I was a kid, I had no contact with nature whatsoever. However, when I grew up, I started practicing triathlons. And I do remember that I started having this interaction with nature every time I would go out to Valle Bravo or to Ixtapa and to Puerto Vallarta to practice the sports and swim in a lake or swim in the ocean, and then practice bike and observe nature. I started watching, trash on the side of the street, and then watching pollution in the lakes. And I started to become very, very aware of the situation. And it was back in the 90s in Mexico City, it was very polluted. The air pollution was a really big problem. And I used to travel I had to cross the whole city. I lived in Pedregal, which is a neighborhood south of Mexico City. And I had to go to Tec de Monterrey, which was on the upper north side of the city. It was so far away, and we had to cross the whole city. And I do remember the air pollution was really, really bad. And I remember I had an epiphany when I was starting my law degree in ITAM, and I was preparing myself to go for a run. And I heard in the news that, the anchor was saying the pollution is so high that we recommend not to go out and practice any sports because the air pollution is very bad. And at that point, I realized it was an epiphany, because I just realized, we are doing the things completely upside down. This is completely wrong. Like, people would tell you that it's good to practice sports, especially go for a run. But if someone tells you you cannot go for a run because the air pollution is really bad, that hit my heart directly. And from that moment on, I became like an activist. I remember that year I started to organize a lot of things in school, trying to raise awareness and trying to tell people that we need to change. And it was a school, well-educated people would go there, and everybody would throw the trash outside of the bin. And it was like the normal. And for me, that was like, I can't believe these people will become, the governors or high political, at some sort of political position. And these can be people with this lack of awareness. So I do remember I became an activist first, and then I started losing a lot of friends. And I said, no, this is not the way to go. So I kind of got in a little bit in the middle. And but I definitely became a person really concerned about the situation. And I dreamed about doing what I'm doing right now, which is inspire young people to start their own companies, and with a sustainability design, so that they can help regenerate ecosystems rather than destroy them or deplete them. So this is my story, and I guess that was the impact I had when I was a kid, that I had no contact with nature, and then I had a lot of contact with nature, and that changed my life.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This is like exactly why I wanted to ask this question. The first words that you said, Santiago, right now, that, oh, I haven't thought about my youth or when I was a kid, in such a long time. And I think that if we actually want to reconnect to our roots, and if we actually want to reconnect to nature, we need to take those steps back and just acknowledge how we were living our lives since we were born, right? And how we were, walking that path, and how we were taking actions, and, with John sharing, such a personal experience, but even having that huge of an impact, that experience had such an impact, on not the accident per se, but, watching life, just vanish just like that. And we are seeing exactly the same thing right now with our environment. So yeah, thank you all of three for sharing a little bit of you in a more personal matter. So yeah, that's why I wanted just to shake it off, and bring all the colors into perspective, leave out the black and white and just work with all of the grays. So right now I would love to jump into more of a personal questions. And I would love to start off with Erica as well. So Erica, through your work, you fight to seek and build the best way to bring nature closer to citizens within Mexico City, and that can be a really chaotic place. And we see it and we live it every single day, where everyone seems to be so disconnected from each other and from nature itself. So how has the journey of using holistic tools been effective as a way to connect this to a political, economical, entrepreneurial business? And secondly, how noticeable has their impact been with policy and decision making?
Thank you, Sue. And I would like to connect that question to the last one you made, and with Santiago's answer, because I really reflected myself with that answer, where like the last part where we all start like becoming activists. And I think I had a real transition, like from activism to understanding the importance of building multi-sectorial alliances. Actually, my favorite ODS is the 17th, where we talk about the strategic alliances and the importance the important part of building these alliances with government, with corporations, with local partners, ONGs, etc., like to actually meet our goals of having more sustainable cities, or more sustainable like green areas. And the holistic tools I've been like I've practiced and I have like integrated into Ectagono and into our like into what we do every day, is like understanding what we do, like everything we do in a holistic way, like understanding not only that we are part of an ecosystem, but how to create like a social ecosystem of alliances out of what we're doing. The importance of having like the government aligned with all these goals we're trying to meet, and creating like all the creating all the sorry, I forgot the word in English, all the herramientas, like all these
Tools.
all these tools we need to actually like get to build like all these goals, and the importance of also like getting all of these corporations also aligned like in an ESG strategies, but also in understanding in a human way like the importance in meeting all these objectives like that we collectively need to get. And sorry, and secondly, the importance in having all of these policies in decision making, like in everything we're doing, we always like to get like integrated for example, in the green areas in Mexico City right now, we're working with the academy and with the government in getting all these policies around them to ensure a long-term impact in these green areas. And in myself, like personally, I like we always integrate like holistic tools to work this in a day-to-day basis, understanding that first we need to get our inner nature aligned every day, no, by meditating, by every day like aligning with a personal purpose, every day aligning with how we're gonna make our relationship sustainable, our health sustainable, and like by getting all these coherence aligned, like in a mirror to what we're trying to do with our purpose in our entrepreneurship, or in our or in all like in our goals, like it's gonna get us there more easily. And I'm sorry, I had a little bit of trouble working that answer in English. But yeah, it's basically like understanding like the ecosystem as a social ecosystem, as I said, like aligning and entretejiendo, es que sorry, I don't know, like I always use like very technical words in Spanish and I don't know how to translate them into English, like all of these alliances to get to work like the projects in a more aligned way.
Yeah, thank you. And no worries. I also get my English all messed up sometimes. It's really hard to change from one language to the other and just, jump from concept to concept. But thank you so much for that answer. I really wanted to bring this part of, why use holistic tools. And it's one of the things that I really respect and admire from you and from your company, from Ectagono, that you actually brought it into the table and you are actually bringing it into, decision makers and to leaders and everything. The word holistic right now, it's mostly used as a, as a trend. And sometimes for people, it's really easy to just push it away or, make you look or think of yourself as crazy. But the way that you have, like encapsulated all of the world and all of the concept, and actually, use the individual as, if you're not okay, we cannot make this okay. So I really love that. And yeah, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for, and you can, yes.
Yeah, I would like to compliment what you just said, because I think you just helped me to explain what I was trying to say, some part of it. And yes, we've tried to transport these tools to, as you said, like to corporations, to government, etc., and to all the work we're doing. And what we try to do when taking it to them is explaining these tools as ancestral tools we're learning from Earth, from Earth and from our ancestors. And I think that when you explain it that way, people the government and the corporations see it more like as a cultural experience. And when you explain also like the science behind this, the science behind nature, behind nature, behind the communities and everything, like it's understood in a different way, no? So that's what, yeah, that's what we try to do. And another thing is, yeah, also actually, yes, like when we started doing all of this, you actually, like, people, yeah, you actually are taken sometimes as crazy, or as also it's breaking paradigms, no? But when people do it for the first time, like, we've implemented all of these tools, for example, with banks, no? We've had a lot of experiences with them where we were like skeptical, like, how are they gonna take like these tools? And it's very impressive how every one of us has a deep connection with holistic understandings, no? I think it's like, it's part of, o sea, what we need to do is like start breaking these paradigms in our, o sea, in the publics and in the different like spheres we're working with. And it's very impressive how, o sea, sí, o sea, how maybe like the first time they see it, people are skeptical, but then they start implementing it, and they start, o sea, like the first time, o sea, they will start like working with it and implementing it más adelante, like more for, sí,
Yeah,
sorry.
continuously. It's like a domino impact, you know? It happens like that, you know? You throw one piece and it start like replicating into others. Thank you so much for that. Okay, we're gonna jump to John now for his question. And you know, John, you have dedicated a great part of your life to building a more sustainable community for everyone around you. I've been you know, grateful and honored enough to actually experience it, and you know, not just being with your family, but the way you engage and communicate with the community of Campeche. So I would like to ask you, how do you approach your community through your work to push them to be more sustainable? And how do you keep them engaged to make everyday changes?
You make me sound really noble, Sue, by developing devoting a large part of my life to this. I think, in a way, you could just bring it right back, and like fundamentally, like, we all have to exist in our own heads, in our own bodies, and so on. So, like, it does sound really grand the way you put it, but actually, for me, it's just about, who do I want to be? Again, it goes back to this sort of self-questioning, and who I want to be is somebody who has particular values in life, who tries to, I always say, to leave more in the fridge than you find, as a kind of metaphor. And actually, in terms of I guess the community, our community, there's so many different definitions of community, of course, but like, there's a community here, but then we are a community. You know, this Venn diagram of communities ultimately is a global community too. And I think what I've learned is that actually you can really clutter things by working through objectives and goals and so on. And I understand that they're important, especially when you are working at a particular level with organizations and governments and so on. Machines understand that level of discourse and dialogue much better. But actually, what I've learned we work much more at a grassroots level. And what I've learned about this level of engagement is that actually we're all dreamers. We're all a bit crazy. We're all dreamers. We all have aspirations, hopes, dreams, fears, whoever we are, whatever job we're in. And actually allowing people to have those conversations with you and me with them and so on, really just open space for us to share these notions of, again, who we want to be, these sort of aspirational notions. And then once that happens, once you open that space up, actually it's really straightforward then, because fundamentally everybody basically agrees, whoever they are, on who it is that they want to be and what they want from the world and what they want for their children and so on. So it's just about, I've found, just sort of slightly shifting that discourse a little bit. And then, of course, continuing that engagement and that conversation through time. But it's, like I would say, and I'm being dead serious here, this isn't me generating our community to do something. It's just a community coming together and sharing those hopes, dreams, and fears, and going, okay, right, how do we go about this? And then maybe a supplementary point to that as well is, I feel like a lot of the communication that we have these days is also about, top-down answers this is what we must do to move forward and so on. And actually, in community here, that's never the discourse. The discourse is always, where do we want to get to? And then for us all to look at each other like with terrified eyes and go, how on earth do we do this? But then we go baby steps. So the first thing we do is this, and then we do this, and then maybe you can help with this, and we can help with that. And that has the byproduct plus as well of the fact that, as Erica was saying, it also generates this this notion of community, which is all about, you know, resilience, strength in community, and so on. And just low-level resolving of problems also just makes you as a community all the stronger. So I genuinely don't think it's a revolutionary position that's been taken here. I think it's just like just guiding people towards looking at the horizon, just shifting their eyes 20 degrees towards a particular point in the future, and then things just generally fall into place for themselves.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with you, John. I love that answer. Thank you so much. And I mean, yes, I could go on and on and on about, you know, what I think, but you said it perfectly. And yeah, that is exactly what the sense of community really actually means. You know, I think community, you don't need a leader within your community, but you actually need to make everyone, you know, every single individual a leader, which is in every one of us, you know. So yeah, thank you so much. So now turning to you, Santiago. You know, we've only met once and it was very fast. It was just like a hello, goodbye. So, you know, as well as the other panelists and what I read through what you sent to me, you have a remarkable journey within environmentalism. But as we all know, you know, the environmental crisis seems to be getting bigger by the day. So my question would be, what can you say are the main key points we should be focusing on when trying to break the system or even working by creating a new, more integrated, resilient network?
Okay, I guess my answer would be that we need to focus in awareness. When people are aware, and aware means when they realize something for the first time. We say in Spanish, cuando te cae el 20, no? When all of a sudden you realize that you had a way of thinking and changes and shifts the paradigm, we need to understand, we need to make people think that we are part of nature. We're not something different, independent from nature. All human species is part of nature. But that awareness, a lot of people, they don't have it. So I guess that would be, for me, one of the most important things we need to focus so we can break up the system. Because once we realize that we are part of nature, then we understand that we already live in a sustainable world. If you don't believe that, just observe nature. As an example is, you can ask a young person what he thinks about the environment, and they just repeat the narrative that we hear all the time, that everything's going to be climate change, everything's going to be destroyed in 2030, as if they were gods that know for certain that that is the date that everything's going to be like run over. So I guess when people become aware that we already live in a sustainable world, and that the only thing we need to observe is nature and how nature resolves the problems, it's when we are going to understand that we already have the solutions. The solutions already exist. And just think about how nature doesn't produce any waste at all, or think about how efficient nature works, or think about how they, you know, they produce, and how nature is so resilient and still there despite all the impact that we're having on nature. So one of the examples that we're doing here in our place where I work here in Mexico City is we are transforming a co-work into an eco-hub 3.8. And the 3.8 stands for 3.8 billion of years since we have life on Earth. And the idea is to start having conversations with people like Erica. We have a beautiful conversation with her and her team here about all her plans and her vision of what she wants to do with Ectagono. And that's precisely what we're doing to create a new and more integrated, resilient network, to bring all these young and incredible sustainable minds together and start working together as a network and start solving the problems that we're facing today. It has to do with unsustainability in the way we transport, in the way we build, in the way we eat, in the way we produce, absolutely everything. So I don't know if you agree, Erika, but we had a wonderful experience just a couple of weeks or last week here. And I had to say that we are believing in leaders like Erika because they have it very clear. They have been using these holistic tools very well and very surprisingly with extraordinary results. And that's what we're looking for, that talent.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Santiago, for that answer. And I think that actually, you know, that answer in this question, I'm just realizing it encapsulates why we wanted to bring all of you together here and what we wanted to talk about, you know, how and why sustainability starts in our communities, right? So, you know, for example, Erika mentioned that she has worked with banks and John mainly works with communities. And, you know, so it's amazing to see how, you know, actually all the sectors can come together, you know, at the end. And there is a possible way for them to connect because every single one of them has a leader, has a person that is aligning everyone else, you know, with these same ideas. You know, we share the same ideas, we share the same concepts, and we don't need them to be, you know, these big fancy words or big fancy talks. You know, it's just simple and it's easy. You know, as you mentioned, Santiago, nature has the answer at the end. You know, it's always the answer, nature. I wanted to also jump into a couple more of questions for everyone. I would like to start off with this one. And I mean, we can jump off, you know, from you. So it says, what do you think are the main errors of political leader and business owners when wanting to tackle any of these challenges, you know, any of environmental challenges in general? And how can we invite them to have a systems view in order to propose and implement more effective solutions? This taken from the idea of, you know, that, you know, it's scary, you know, to think that this is such a big world and we live in such a capitalistic world, you know, and there's businesses and there's people doing whatever they want to do. And those people are called, you know, world leaders and are presidents and are, you know, and it's very scary. So, you know, so what do you think are the main errors and how can we actually invite them? We can go in the same order. Erika, we can start with you.
Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, with the government, for example, I believe like by using them, like they make mistakes when they use all of like environment like just as a campaign and not actually like as a like as an implementation, no? So sometimes like we hear all of these like all of these like promises they have in their like in their agenda, but it doesn't actually become an implementation later. However, I also believe that once they put it into their agenda, not only governments but also business owners, whatever reason it will be, like if it's just like a marketing thing or a communicational thing, like once they make it a part of their company or of their like of their agenda, as I said, they will start actually becoming a habit out of it, no? So like it's I sometimes I compare sustainability with well-being, and I believe like once you like start going out there to the gym or actually eating like with a more like nutritional mindset, even if you're doing it like just for a fashion thing, once you do it, like it becomes a habit. And that's what I've been experimenting or seeing or experiencing, sorry, with governments and also with companies, with business owners and with companies, no? And what business owners are making errors are in not taking the like ESG's policies actually seriously, and maybe like not learning from them, like in a real and integral and holistic way for the company, no? So what we've encountered here in Mexico in some companies is that like sustainable areas in the company are like don't actually have like an academical formation in sustainability, no? O sea, they don't even know what sustainability means. Like many of the sustainability areas here, well, not all of them, because there are many companies which were actually, we have a lot of like prepared profiles, but some of them are just like, they needed to have a sustainability area inside of the company, and they just like inserted like in the marketing people or in the communications people, like now you're gonna do sustainability as well, no? So I think like the educational part of it for the companies, it's very, very important if they actually want to make a deep change in their processes, in the innovation of the products and services they are gonna offer to their community, and understand actually that like the new generations actually like also if governments and if companies don't change, they're not gonna give their vote of, also they're not gonna give their vote to them, no? As sustainable consumers or as conscious consumers. So that's like very important. And we can invite them by letting them know that they can be change agents if they start like thinking and thinking in a more holistic way, no? And I've found like that many, also like actually being change agents for companies right now, and also for governments, it also has been like a very transcendental part in their change, because they have actually the power in transforming a lot of people, no? So that would be my answer.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that answer. I completely agree with you. I was just checking the time, and so we are about to run out of time. So I have another 2 questions prepared. So I'm actually just going to make them also personal, if you all don't mind. So we can jump to the next question, which is, in your opinion, is it possible for all social and entrepreneurial sectors to work together towards a more sustainable world? I know we've gone over this, but maybe be just like a bit more specific on, the hows and the whys. This would go for, I don't know who wants to take it, John or Santiago?
Go ahead, John.
Sure. I can take this. Look, of course it is. And we've seen it with the pandemic. And we see it when there's an earthquake in Mexico City. And we see it when there are deep fundamental crises that everybody on Earth, that multi-sector stakeholders agree is a crisis. The fundamental problem with the environmental crisis is that not everybody agrees that it's a crisis at the moment. That's the big existential question, is the moment of realization, which of course can be, as Santiago was saying, it can be personal realization, moments of realization, inceptional moments of realization. Of course, government can help with that, business can help with that too, but fundamentally, is it possible? Of course it's possible. It just needs a particular kind of awakening and realization and consciousness, which was a lot of what Santiago was saying in his very first answer. So absolutely, yes.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I think that is one of the hardest parts, right? Like actually creating conscious actions and conscious change, into people, into schools, into, companies, into different, stakeholders. It's one of the trickiest things, but as you say, it is quite possible. Thank you so much, John, for that answer. We can jump into the next one. So this would go for Santiago. So as cops keep failing, and I apologize if there is someone here that actually believe in cops. I believe in their essence, but I think the way they take them out and they're, presented into the public, and how they actually try to involve the community, which, they keep leaving groups and collectives aside, keep failing. As cops keep failing, communities need to rise. This is like an emergency call. So do you believe in this, and why? And how can communities actually change by working from the inside out? How can communities be light leaders, as John taught me this concept.
What do you mean by COP, Susana? COP?
Oh, COP, like COP26, COP.
The COP. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yes, they keep failing. I guess they keep failing because we, I truly don't believe in governments anymore, and especially now after the pandemic and all the things that we have observed. It's just crazy. We know people are there, not because we're voting for them, but because some, powerful interests put them in power, which is very different. So definitely the COPs will keep failing. And I do believe the communities need to raise for sure, because we are the majority of the people. The majority of the people live in communities, and we are the ones that we need to stand up against these forces that have only been submitting us. They have only been, it's been dictatorships. So yes, and I mean, we as leaders and leaders of communities, we need to start working side by side, understanding that we are much more able to achieve things, just like Ectagono is doing, achieving amazing things with the community. And I mean, you have to be politically correct and say the government is there and they're going to support us. But to be honest, they only think about election times, and they don't think about, really, they don't think about people. So the importance of community, Susana, is really, it's growing. And I think that solution will be there. I mean, you can see now all the protests all over the world, saying that things need to change and protecting their interests, as farmers in the world, as the medical doctors, as everybody is kind of becoming aware, and we are beginning to experience that there are so many different ways of, living our lives in a much more sustainable ways than expecting governments to solve the problems. They're not the ones who are going to be solving the problems. It's the communities and the companies that are really the small companies that are really working in generating jobs and creating businesses. That's where I see the richness. And we have to think, if we mimic nature, that's how nature works. Nature works in a very collaborative way, and not a competitive way. So I guess that's what I think. That's my answer to your question.
Thank you so much. I think I totally agree. I mean, I think everyone here agrees with that. And yeah, I think it's scary sometimes. I mean, this comes like from as all of you got personal, with all your experiences, and with the first question, I focus on communities and I work with communities, and it gets sometimes scary, because, you're trying to hold hands with everyone, and you're actually trying to tell them, this, what I'm doing is not as big as what you are capable of doing, and the power that you have in your hands and the knowledge that you have, and actually just bringing together, this ancestral part, and this, bringing back the roots and the culture and the traditions of every single community. I also think it's going to be, the answer to everything. That's what I was mentioning at the beginning, that going back, to this exact question, how was I as a kid? How was my background? Did I like it or not? I did like it. Okay. Is it happening right now? No. Okay. Can I replicate it? Yes, I can. It's starting to do these changes and actually taking advantage of what we have right now at our hands, and just putting it out there. Thank you so much. Yeah, Erica.
I don't know if I have if we still have time, to.
Yeah, we have time. Go ahead. Yeah, totally.
What you just said and what Santi just closed, with the last question. And I would like to complement to that last question, because I believe that we're always pointing fingers to the government, or pointing fingers to the companies, and also this question for me, the answer would be, I would like to take it to another road, where yes, also the new decisions in the cities need to be taken actually by their people, and we can't expect for the governments to do everything for us, no? So I loved when Santi said we need to be thinking like as a network and thinking from a collective space, but also from the inside out, no? Like from the inside of our community and from the inside of ourselves. And as cliche as it may sound, we need to start within ourselves and with our coherence and inner sustainability and wellness in order to like replicate that to the outside, no? And like to the question you made before, of how we can work from the entrepreneurial sectors through also like towards a more sustainable world. I think we're missing, like we're not integrating as entrepreneurs sometimes the third pillar of sustainability, which is the economical, like the economical pillar. And I found in Mexico that the economical factor is still not taking as it should be, no, as seriously as it should be, because we're still like looking at sustainability like from a philanthropical place, no, not from a like more serious place, or like from a I'm helping space, and it needs to be understood as basic and not as a like as a nice to have. As like we need to actually take it as a need to have, and yes, like actually like integrate sustainability in a social, environmental, but also in an economical like perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, this part that you mentioned, that it might sound cliche, how, everyone, we know this saying, how romantics never die. And I think, bringing that back, that romanticism, into even concepts or words, that's why poets and artists and music live so long, we have to bring that back, but in a way of honoring and respecting, everything that we are and everything that we can be, but by respecting the environment that we were invited to live in. So yeah, I love that answer, and that, the complementing of the other questions. I really loved it. Thank you so much.
I would like to add something, Susana. Something really strange happened in Mexico City yesterday. I don't know, Erika, you were here with the earthquake. And it's not, I don't think it's a coincidence that it trembles every time, or it's been 3 days, like in September 19th, that we've had earthquakes. And yesterday was exactly the same hour as 5 years ago, which is crazy. I mean, the possibilities or the probabilities for that to happen is like 0.000000001%. What I do believe is the collective mind. I mean, just think about it. Everybody, all the city was doing a trial before. Everybody was thinking about the earthquake. That's the power of the common mind. Everybody was thinking at the same time on the earthquake. And then a couple hours later, it started to shake. It's pretty impressive. But what I do believe is when you have the community, all the mindset, all together with the power of making a change, I do believe in that force is much stronger than governors or political people that are there because somebody, I mean, they're just going to be there for a small period of time. And it's not, I do believe in the power of the community. That's my whole message in the end.
I love that. Thank you so much for adding that. And I think it's actually a perfect way to almost close this panel. We have, I think, a couple of minutes if someone from the audience has a question, which I guess not, because I think everything was very well explained. And, apart from, I think I have more questions myself now and reflections that I have to do on my own. But yeah, I loved everything. And I would like to thank you all so much for your time. I think one of the main key points from this panel was, the importance of alliances, the importance of, coming together, of seeing the potential that we have. And I'm going to go back to this concept that John taught me, of being a light leader, of focusing and finding those light leaders within communities. And as a light leader, carrying that responsibility of, just not even passing your light, but just pointing the light that everyone else has within them. So I loved it. Thank you so much again. You know, as we can say, as a community, as a collective, we all have the power, we all have the answers within ourselves. We just have to turn around a bit and look at nature, actually observe it, respect it, honor it again, and see how, you know, she gives us back the answers so easily and so, you know, lightly. You know, it's amazing. So I would thank you, all of you again, so much for taking your time, for being part of this panel, of this discussion, which is of most importance. We're gonna keep the recording, which I know, you know, I'm gonna watch again, and I want to thank all of the audience who joined us again. So thank you all so much again. Thank you.
Thank you, Susana. Thank you, Salvador, for the invitation.